A jagged tear in reality split the sky, crackling with raw energy as an unnatural storm churned around it. The people of Eldoria, from the lowest peasant to the highest noble, looked up in horror as the heavens themselves seemed to shatter. From the abyssal rift stepped forth an enormous figure, its towering form forged from gleaming metal, its eyes a malevolent red glow. The ground trembled beneath its titanic feet as steam hissed from vents along its armored frame. This was no beast, no dragon, no force of nature they had ever encountered. This was something beyond their understanding, a machine. At the heart of this war engine stood General Kael Vortanis, his gaze cold and calculating behind the reinforced glass of his command deck. He scanned the landscape, the primitive world stretching before him like a child's forgotten toy box. Stone castles, wooden huts, dirt roads, and iron-clad warriors wielding swords and bows. Kael smirked. This was no war, this was an acquisition. "Status report," he said, his voice laced with mechanical distortion. "All systems functional," came the clipped response from his tactical AI, Cynthia, 9. "Atmospheric conditions stable, gravitational field within expected variance. Indigenous lifeforms display signs of immediate distress. Threat assessment, negligible." Kael chuckled. "Predictable. Engage initial deployment." A series of metallic thuds echoed as the Mecha Warlord's forces emerged from the portal behind him. The drone legions, sleek humanoid machines of gunmetal grey, marched in unison, their red visors scanning for hostiles. Hovering above them, mechanized warships unfurled their energy weapons, humming with restrained power. The first wave of the invasion had begun. From the kingdom below, the alarm bells rang out in panicked desperation. The high towers of Eldoria's capital flared with warning lights as the city guards rushed to the walls, gripping their weapons with white-knuckled fear. General Kael watched as an aging knight, clad in weathered armor, stepped forward atop the battlements. His voice carried across the battlefield, strong despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "By the decree of King Aldric, ruler of Eldoria, I demand to know your purpose, metal demon. If you come in peace, speak now." Kael tilted his head, intrigued by the defiance. He activated his external speakers, his voice amplified like a god's decree. "Peace? No. Efficiency. Your world is primitive, inefficient. You cling to outdated methods of warfare, to feudal hierarchy and superstition. But do not despair. I am here to bring progress. Submit, and you shall be restructured into something greater." The knight's grip tightened on his sword. "And if we refuse?" Kael sighed. He had seen this before on a dozen worlds. The stubbornness, the misplaced courage. He admired it, in a way. But admiration would not change the outcome. "If you refuse," he said, his voice colder now, "you will be eradicated." The first attack came not from the machines, but from the kingdom. A fireball, bright, searing with arcane energy, hurtled from the highest spire, aimed directly at Kael's war machine. He had expected resistance, but the sheer force of the impact surprised even him. The explosion engulfed his mech in flames, sending shockwaves through the air. For a moment, the gathered soldiers cheered, believing their magic had struck true. But then the fire dissipated. The Mecha Warlord still stood, his armor glowing red-hot for a moment before rapidly cooling. A deep chuckle emanated from his speakers. "Fascinating," he mused. "You possess energy-based weaponry, albeit crude. This requires further analysis." Without hesitation, Kael raised his mech's left arm, an enormous cannon emerging from its forearm plating. With a deafening hum, a bolt of plasma lanced forward, striking the tower from which the spell had been cast. The top half of the structure erupted in a fiery explosion, debris raining down onto the city below. Screams filled the air. "Deploy suppression units," Kael commanded. The drones advanced. Blades extended from their arms, glowing with an eerie blue light as they moved in perfect synchronization. The first wave of human soldiers met them with shields raised, swords slashing, arrows loosed in desperate volleys. But they were too slow. The drones weaved through the attacks with mechanical precision, their movements too sharp, too fast, their counterstrikes immediate and lethal. Kael watched, arms crossed. "Your valor is wasted," he said, more to himself than to his enemies. From the skies, his aerial forces struck next. Energy bombs cascaded down, reducing stone watchtowers to rubble. The kingdom's ballistae fired back, but their wooden bolts shattered harmlessly against reinforced alloy plating. The battle was not a contest, it was a demonstration. Then, something unexpected. A knight, faster than the others, managed to breach the drone lines. He leaped onto the back of one of Kael's war machines, plunging a glowing runeblade deep into its circuitry. The mech shuddered, sparks flying as it collapsed, its systems overwhelmed by whatever ancient enchantment the blade carried. Kael's eyes narrowed. Magic. Actual magic. Not just elemental flares or raw energy discharges, but something that could interact with and disable his technology. That was new. The knight turned, removing his helmet. A woman, young, fierce, eyes burning with determination. She pointed her sword at Kael's war machine. I am Princess Seraphina, heir to the throne of Eldoria, and I swear, you will not take our home without a fight. Kael smiled, intrigued. Good, he said, activating his mech's targeting systems. I was hoping for some entertainment. As the battle raged below, he knew one thing for certain. This conquest was going to be more interesting than he had anticipated. The battlefield was chaos. Smoke and fire filled the air as the ancient kingdom of Eldoria clashed with the impossible war machines of General Kael Vortanis. The clash of steel on metal rang out as knights charged forward, their blades enchanted with spells meant to tear through dark creatures and demonic forces. But these were not creatures of flesh. The Mecha Warlord's drones, cold and unfeeling, moved with surgical precision, their energy blades slicing through armor and shields as though they were made of paper. The kingdom's warriors fought valiantly, but Kael watched with amusement from his command deck, his fingers tapping lazily against the armrest of his mechanical throne. It was a hopeless battle, and they all knew it. Then the sky darkened. The winds howled as storm clouds formed unnaturally fast, swirling with arcane power. From the highest tower of Eldoria's citadel, Grand Mage Eldrin raised his staff, his robes whipping violently in the enchanted tempest. His voice thundered across the battlefield as ancient words of power erupted from his lips. The very air seemed to bend around him, his body glowing with the raw force of magic itself.
Kael's scanners blared in warning. Unidentified energy source detected. High volatility. Potential disruption of mechanized systems. Here, no, his onboard AI ran calculations at lightning speed. Warning, electromagnetic anomalies consistent with previously recorded magical phenomena. Probability of interference, 76%. Kael's expression hardened. So, they still have tricks left. Without hesitation, slammed his staff into the ground. A blinding arc of lightning burst forth, not from the sky, but from the very fabric of existence itself. The energy snaked across the battlefield like a living creature, striking drone after drone, sending them into violent convulsions before their metallic husks collapsed in lifeless heaps. The storm intensified, bolts of fire and ice raining down from the heavens, tearing through Kael's forces with a fury unlike anything his technology had ever encountered. For the first time since stepping into this world, Kael felt something unexpected: resistance. Deploy countermeasures, he snapped. The Mecha Warlord's warships adjusted their targeting systems, firing beams of concentrated energy toward the citadel's tower. But before the blasts could make contact, a shimmering barrier of golden light materialized around it, absorbing the attack and dispersing the energy into the storm. Kael narrowed his eyes. These primitives weren't just wielding magic like a blunt instrument. They were integrating it into their defenses. And it wasn't just. Across the battlefield, warriors bearing enchanted sigils on their armor struck back against the mechanical invaders with newfound ferocity. Arrows coated in glowing blue runes pierced through drone plating, causing explosions upon impact. Knights wielding weapons imbued with divine energy cleaved through metal as though it were mere wood. Even the beasts of joined the fight. Wyverns soared through the sky, their riders hurling spears crackling with enchanted lightning, each strike disrupting Kael's war machines in ways that conventional weapons never could. Then came the dragons. From the volcanic peaks beyond the Capita, monstrous forms broke through the clouds, their colossal wings blotting out the sun. Their scales shimmered with unnatural colors, pulsating with raw magical energy. These were no ordinary dragons. They were creatures of legend, their very essence intertwined with the fabric of magic. The lead dragon, a titanic beast of scales and molten eyes, let out a roar that shook the heavens. With one powerful beat of its wings, it launched itself toward Kael's flagship. The Mecha Warlord's warships adjusted course, locking onto the incoming threat. A barrage of plasma bolts surged forth, striking the dragon. The sky lit up in fiery explosions, and for a moment, Kael thought the beast had been obliterated. But then, from the inferno, the dragon emerged unscathed. Its scales absorbed the energy, glowing even brighter as it funneled the raw power into its maw. With a deafening roar, the beast unleashed a torrent of violet fire. No, not fire, pure destruction, engulfing two of Kael's warships in an instant. The ship's shields flared, struggled, then collapsed as the hulls melted away like wax before a raging inferno. Kael's fingers curled into a fist. Impressive, he admitted. But I don't lose. He tacked a control on his armrest, and the air shimmered around him. From behind his forces, towering figures emerged, his mechs, massive humanoid war machines that dwarfed even the dragons. Their armor gleamed under the storm's fury, their mechanical jaunts hissing with energy. One of them raised a colossal hand, and a blade of pure plasma ignited along its length. The dragon lunged. The mech countered. The two titanic forces clashed in midair, sending shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. Sparks and fire erupted as dragon claws met reinforced alloy, as plasma swords clashed against elemental fury. The storm above grew wilder, reality itself bending under the sheer forces being unleashed. And below, the battle raged on. Princess Seraphina, leading the front lines, fought like a whirlwind, her enchanted blade slicing through Kael's bronze with terrifying efficiency. Every movement of hers was guided by magic, her reflexes heightened beyond human capability. She turned, meeting Kael's gaze even from afar, her emerald eyes burning with defiance. Kael smirked. Ah, the princess. He leaned forward. Let's see how long you last. With a simple command, his war machine shifted. A hidden compartment on his mech's shoulder opened, revealing a sleek, menacing weapon. Energy coalesced at its tip, something new, something designed to counter magic. A pulse shot forward, striking the battlefield. The magical energies flickered, trembled, then collapsed. The golden barrier around the citadel cracked. The storm above faltered, gasped, feeling the disruption in the arcane weave. The dragons roared in confusion as their enchantments sputtered. Kael grinned. Now we play by my rules. As the battle shifted once more, the Mecha Warlord knew one thing for certain. Magic was powerful. But science, true science, could always find a way to break it.
The moon hung low over Eldoria as the tension in the air grew thick. After the ferocious clashes on the battlefield, General Kael Vortanis had finally realized the truth. Brute force alone wouldn't secure this world. The humans, no, the people of Eldoria, had something he hadn't counted on: magic. And though his war machines were unparalleled in sheer might, their vulnerability to magic had been made painfully clear. It was time for a new strategy, one that would integrate his superior technology with the unpredictable forces of this world. To conquer Eldoria, he needed something more than his drones and mechs. He needed to understand the magic itself. Kael stood in his command center aboard the flagship, his eyes narrowing as he watched the tactical feeds. Eldrin, the Grand Mage of Eldoria, had proven to be a formidable opponent. But there was more to the kingdom's magical defense than just the storm of lightning and fire that had disrupted his forces. It was the Arcane Engine, a mythical artifact that had been the kingdom's greatest treasure for centuries. Eldrin had used it to power the very spells that had halted Kael's advance. He didn't need to simply destroy magic. He needed to control it. Cynthia, Kael said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. Locate the Arcane Engine. The AI's holographic interface flared to life. Analysis complete. The Arcane Engine is kept within the royal vaults beneath the citadel of Eldoria, heavily guarded by both warriors and magical wards. Probability of retrieval without resistance, 12%. Then we raise the odds, Kael muttered, his hands forming tight fists. Prepare the infiltrator units. We're going in. The infiltrators were Kael's secret weapon, elite soldiers equipped with advanced cloaking devices and the ability to disable any magical traps that stood in their way. They were designed for precision, to strike silently and swiftly in enemy territory. As Kael's forces descended on the royal capital, they moved with terrifying efficiency.
The infiltrators cut through the outer defenses with ease, disabling sentries, disabling wards, and rendering the kingdom's magical barriers ineffective. By the time the Eldorian forces realized what was happening, Kael's soldiers had already breached the inner sanctum of the citadel. Deep in the heart of the royal vaults, Kael's team reached their destination, the Arcane Engine. The artifact was a relic of unimaginable power, a crystalline core pulsing with arcane energy, its surface etched with ancient runes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Surrounding it was a complex network of defensive wards and barriers, each more intricate than the last. Kael knew that his mechs and drones couldn't break through this without risking destruction. But the infiltrators had been trained for just this kind of situation. One of the infiltrators, a figure cloaked in shadow, stepped forward, casting a small orb into the air. It shimmered, and with a low hum, the surrounding wards began to flicker and fade. The artifact's protective magic had been breached. As the last of the energy barriers dissolved, Kael approached the Arcane Engine, his armored hands hovering over the artifact's glowing surface. He could feel the raw power radiating from it, ancient and untapped. "Activate it," Kael ordered. The infiltrator hesitated for a moment, then complied. The hum of the Arcane Engine grew louder, vibrating through the air like the pulse of the world itself. The runes began to glow brighter, and the entire room seemed to tremble as if responding to the ancient magic being awakened. Kael's expression remained unreadable as he watched the process unfold. Magic was nothing like his technology, nothing he could predict or control. But this was his path forward. With this device, he would bend magic to his will, and Eldoria would be his. However, as the final rune activated, something unexpected happened. A low, menacing growl reverberated through the room. The lights flickered, and a wave of energy exploded outward from the Arcane Engine. The infiltrators fell back, their advanced cloaking technology failing as they were thrown to the ground. Kael's systems flickered, and his mech's power core surged in response to the massive wave of raw energy. Something was wrong. "Report," Kael snapped, trying to regain control of the situation. "Cynthia?" The AI's voice faltered as if struggling against a sudden influx of data. Unanticipated response. The Arcane Engine's activation is altering the surrounding magical fabric. Probability of system failure, 89%. Kael's heart quickened as the space around the Arcane Engine began to distort. The walls of the vault rippled, and shadows began to move unnaturally, swirling and stretching in ways they should not. Eldrin had anticipated the invasion. He had set a trap, a final safeguard woven into the very magic that powered the Arcane Engine. Kael's eyes narrowed. The ground trembled as a figure emerged from the darkness. Cloaked in flowing robes of silver and black, Eldrin stood in the doorway, his hands raised in a powerful gesture. His eyes blazed with the knowledge of centuries, his expression filled with fury and determination. "Did you really think you could control magic, Kael Vortanis?" he boomed, his voice reverberating with raw power. Kael's mech arm twitched as he considered his options. "I never planned to control it, mage. I planned to integrate it." Eldrin's lips curled into a smile. "Then you will be the first to learn that not all forces can be tamed." With a flick of his wrist, a torrent of magical energy shot forward, striking the Arcane Engine. The device reacted violently, sending a pulse of energy that collided with Kael's mech, shaking it to its core. "Initiate emergency shutdown," Kael barked, but his command was met with static. His systems were overwhelmed. The Arcane Engine had not only resisted his control, it had begun to overpower his technology. The tide of battle had shifted again. But this time, Kael realized, it wasn't just technology and magic fighting against one another. It was something far more dangerous, the unyielding will of Eldoria, a force even he could not foresee.
The battle had raged for days, with both sides pushing to their limits. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, General Kael Vortanis realized that this was no longer a contest of technology versus magic. It was about something deeper, something far more insidious. His forces had suffered devastating losses at the hands of Eldoria's magic, and even his most advanced war machines were no match for the unpredictable forces at play. If he was to claim victory, it would require a transformation, an evolution beyond his initial understanding of what this world could throw at him. Kael had come to this world with the intent of conquest, but now, with no other options left, he would have to become something more. In the heart of his flagship, Kael stood before the Arcane Engine, its power pulsing beneath the steel and machinery. The artifact had eluded him for so long, but now, it was no longer just a tool of magic. It had become his salvation. Cynthia 9, his onboard AI, was processing at a frantic pace, weaving the raw power of magic with the mechanical might of Kael's war machines. Together, they had discovered something that would change everything. "Kael," Cynthia 9's voice echoed through his command deck. "The calculations are complete. The fusion of magic and technology is possible. However, the process is volatile. You must integrate with the Arcane Engine directly. The results are unpredictable." Kael's lips curled into a grim smile. He knew the risk, but the alternative was certain defeat. "Then make it happen." With a swift motion, he moved to the central platform where the Arcane Engine was housed, its crystal heart glowing with ethereal energy. His war machine had been configured for this very moment, its systems designed not just to withstand magical forces, but to merge with them. The interface between man and machine would be unlike anything this world had ever seen. As Kael climbed into the cockpit of his mech, the connection to the Arcane Engine was established. The transformation began almost instantly. A surge of raw energy coursed through Kael's body, his mind buzzing with the fusion of magic and technology. His mech began to hum and pulse with dark energy, its armor plates shifting, melding, as if alive. The once cold, unfeeling machine now exuded a powerful, dark aura, and Kael's eyes glowed a faint violet as arcane symbols flickered across his visor. He was no longer just a warlord. He had become something else entirely, a Mecha Lich. Transformation complete, Cynthia 9 confirmed. You are now fully integrated with the Arcane Engine. Your systems are operating at optimal efficiency. The fusion of magic and machine is stable. Kael flexed his new, enhanced mechanical limbs, feeling the surge of power coursing through him. His connection to the magical energy was undeniable. He felt like a god, omniscient, unstoppable. The very forces that had once threatened him were now at his command. But just as the satisfaction of his power began to settle in, a familiar voice broke through his reverie. "Kael." He turned, his enhanced optics locking onto the figure standing before him. It was Princess Seraphina, her emerald eyes burning with defiance. She stood tall, her enchanted blade gleaming in the dim light of the flagship's war room. "You've gone too far," she said, her voice unwavering despite the gravity of the situation. "This world will never bow to you, no matter how much power you take from it." Kael chuckled darkly, the sound amplified by the mechanical distortion in his voice. "You misunderstand, Princess. This world no longer has a choice." With a flick of his wrist, Kael summoned a torrent of energy, a wave of arcane force that shattered the floor beneath them. The room trembled as the energy crackled in the air, distorting the space around them. Seraphina leaped to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast, but the floor where she had stood moments before was now nothing but rubble. "You've sealed your fate, Seraphina," Kael continued, his voice tinged with both power and malice. "Your world, your people, will serve me, whether they want to or not." But Seraphina didn't back down. With a fierce cry, she raised her blade, its glow intensifying as she summoned the last of her strength. "Not if I have anything to say about it." The princess charged forward, her blade aimed directly at Kael's exposed core. She was fast, too fast for the average warrior, but Kael had become more than just a warlord. He was a Mecha Lich, a being of magic and machine, and his reactions were lightning quick. He raised a hand, conjuring a force field that stopped Seraphina's blade just inches from his chest. "You still don't understand," Kael said, his voice low and dark. "Your magic, your will, it is no match for me now. I am beyond you, beyond this world." Seraphina pushed harder against the barrier, sweat beading on her forehead as she struggled to break through. But the more she fought, the more she realized just how futile her resistance was. The magic was too strong, the technology too advanced. "You're wrong," she said, breathless but defiant. "This world's spirit isn't something you can control. No matter how much power you steal, you'll never understand it." Kael's eyes narrowed, and he raised his hand to deliver the final blow. But just as he prepared to strike, something unexpected happened. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the air, and the very walls of the flagship seemed to shudder. The Arcane Engine flared brighter, the power within it reacting in ways Kael hadn't anticipated. Something was interfering with the fusion, something beyond even his understanding. The system began to fluctuate, its power surging and then faltering as if the magic he had harnessed was trying to reject him. "No!" Kael shouted, his voice distorted as his systems began to flicker. "This cannot be." But before he could react, the magic surged again, this time uncontrollably. The very connection between Kael and the Arcane Engine began to unravel. Sparks flew as his mech systems overloaded, and he was thrown back, his once indomitable form crashing to the ground. Seraphina stood, her blade raised, watching as the Mecha Lich's power faltered. For the first time, Kael felt a sense of vulnerability, something he had never experienced before. He had overestimated his control over the forces he sought to dominate. Now, the tide had turned.